you are watching this video if you are doing a hand-drawn poster and you need help figuring out what the radius is. Now, we have been talking a lot about circles. We've been talking about this thing right here, the diameter. Now, the diameter, if I take this ball right here, the diameter is the distance from from one finger to the other finger. So it's the distance across a circle. Okay. Now, when we're creating our larger planets, so when we're creating Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, what we have to find is we have to find the radius. Now, what the radius is the halfway point between my two fingers that are holding the ball on the sides. Okay. Now, what this is going to allow us to do is if we have the radius, which is where my finger's at right now, we can take a compass or a piece of string and trace the circle. If we use the diameter to trace the circle, we're going to have twice the size of a circle, and that's not what we want. So for these four planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, we want the radius. Now, if you're going to use a compass for all of the planets, okay, so if you're going to use a compass for Venus, Earth, Mars, Mercury, you're going to need to find the radius. Now, the reason we're not using the radius for these is because they're so small. They're less than an inch. So in theory, you can find an object in your house, like a nickel or a quarter or a dime, or whatever's that diameter, and just trace it. It's much easier than trying to use a compass. That being said, if you want to use a compass for these planets, you're going to need to find the radius. I'm just telling you, it's easier if you just find an object that's that size, a bottle cap, something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the radius of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Okay. Now, if you're doing this online and you're watching this video, stop. You don't need to find the radius because you're going to be making the circles based on the diameter. Okay. So to create the circle for these four planets, again, if you want to make these, you're going to have to follow the same steps. We need to find the radius. We do that by taking the diameter and dividing by 2. Okay, not the diameter that the actual planet is. So not 140,000. The diameter that we found to be the scale diameter. Okay, now we're going to round the answer to the nearest 10th, which is the first number to the right. Okay, so for these four planets, you're going to type your answer in the scale radius column. So let's try Jupiter. So here's what we're going to do for Jupiter. Now, here's a disclaimer. If this is not your number, don't use it for your radius. Remember, we each have a different scale number. So if you did not pick 10 for Jupiter, don't type in 10. Don't do what I'm doing. Do what is on your chart. Just do it the same way that I'm doing it. Okay? So for my Jupiter, I'm going to type in 10. I'm going to divide by 2. And this is my scale radius. This is what I'm going to use when I create my circle for Jupiter, because you can put 1 point in the middle of the circle, you can measure out the radius, and then you can trace around with a piece of string, which is what I'm going to show you in another video, or a compass. Okay, let's look at Saturn. Okay, 8.6 divided by 2, 4.3. Okay, let's take a look at Uranus. 3.6 divided by 2, 1.8. That's my radius for Uranus. Neptune. Ooh, this one looks familiar. 3.6 divided by 2 gives me 1.8. So for these four planets, when you watch the video on how to make a circle with a piece of string, you're going to use these numbers, and I'm going to remind you in the video as well. So again, if you want to use a compass for the other planets, do the same steps that I just did. Take the scale diameter, this column right here, and divide by 2, and then round to the 10th for those planets.